The time has come for us to move forward as a fully fledged Generation 3 blockchain with good operating proof of stake and smart contracts. We now have the platform and we can finally build out the dApps that will actually be interesting to use. Ready? Let's go. Allow me to thank everybody who jumped on the Cardano Summit wrap-up live stream. I really wanted to have one episode where we could kind of like summarize and encapsulate everything that happened during the Cardano Summit. And I also knew that was probably going to fall on a weekday, which I did not think would be ideal for a live stream as opposed to a weekend time. But I wanted to do it anyways, so we did it in that sort of Tuesday-ish spot, Monday, Tuesday, depending on where you're at in the world. And I was pretty shocked at the number of people who jumped on. It was way more than I expected. So thank you to everybody who jumped on that live stream. Ever since Alonzo, it seems like everybody's been saying, when dApps? And I think when they said that, they didn't just mean, when are we going to have a lame dApp or two? I think they meant, when are we going to have a dApp that's actually cool, one that's actually interesting to use? Here you go, DC Spark coming through in the clutch with Fracada. Not only interesting and arguably cool, but also open source. This is kind of like their little gift to the entire ecosystem. So it looks like this just barely dropped, but it looks like this little smart contract is going to allow us to fractionalize NFTs so that you can mint a bunch of tokens representing fractionalized interest in those NFTs, distribute those out to your friends and colleagues, whatever you want. And the NFT can only be unlocked from the smart contract when those tokens are presented back. So this is pretty cool. I think DC Spark kind of points out in this blog entry and also in the tweet about it from Sebastian that this is about more than just the novelty of you and your friends buying an NFT together and locking it. This is really, I think, meant to show how NFTs can be used to control access to things via smart contracts. So I think this is a big deal. This is something I'm really excited for. Everybody knows that I'm super interested in functional NFTs. And I think things like that, little projects like this, while they might seem like a novelty for now, are kind of representing the sort of functional patterns we're going to use to do really interesting stuff down the road. So thank you for this, DC Spark. If you don't believe me, you can hear it directly from Sebastian here. Fractional NFTs are going to be so crucial for Cardano. It's not just about fractional JPEGs. It's about fractional tokens that represent access control for Cardano dApps that come with responsibility and revenue streams. You heard that, revenue streams. I think a lot of interesting things are going to come out of these types of sort of concept setting releases. Speaking of building things out in the ecosystem, we also saw Emurgo making good on its promises here. So if you watched the Cardano Summit over the weekend, you know that Ken Kodama, the head of Emurgo in Japan, did a segment where he said, hey, we're going to invest a ton of money in the Cardano ecosystem, and specifically, we're going to invest a fixed amount of money in Africa. And here we see just a couple days later, Emurgo announcing that they have invested in Adanian Labs, which is an African tech incubator for startups building on Cardano, Adaverse, a separate joint venture project with Everest Ventures to incubate African startups building on Cardano, and Milkomeda from DC Spark, the sidechain project that we have profiled previously on this channel. So good job, Emurgo. We also saw a very interesting exchange at the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs today. So we're not going to go too deep on this because I know people can only take so much regulatory discussion, but this was kind of interesting. And this isn't really on regulation per se, but about central bank digital currencies. You'll remember that Senator Toomey here was squarely on our side in the big Senate crypto policy debates. So when he had Fed Chair Jerome Powell giving testimony before the committee, he took that opportunity to say a few things about central bank digital currencies and ask Powell one question. And I think all of it will be a little bit comforting to people who are worried about central bank digital currencies. Of course, there's definitely a strain of crypto thought that this is going to become this dark dystopian thing. And I think this might I think this helps. I think what we saw here helps. So Toomey started out by saying, hey, it looks like we're going down the central bank digital currency route. And I think we need to make sure that a central bank digital currency does not result in the Fed spying on the transactions of Americans. The Fed shouldn't attempt to become a retail bank via the CBDC, and private coins should be able to coexist along with central bank digital currency. He then went on to say that he didn't expect Powell to opine on those issues or give some kind of a policy position from the Federal Reserve. Of course, Powell would not have been willing to do that at this point in time. But he did ask Powell, hey, we don't think that this should be something, this is too important for the future of US competitiveness on the global stage economically. This isn't something that the Federal Reserve should develop on its own. This is something that the Federal Reserve should develop in consultation with the elected representatives of the American people, namely the US Congress. He asked Powell if Powell agreed. And of course, Powell wholeheartedly agreed that this would have to be something that would have to be done in conjunction with Congress, and probably even after Congress passes some legislation giving the Federal Reserve the power to do it. So to the extent that's comforting to you, I think it actually is pretty helpful to hear. Having said that, you may already be aware that this was the same hearing where we saw a reappearance of the dragon here. The dragon decided to proclaim to the world that Fed Chair Powell was a dangerous man who she did not trust to lead the Federal Reserve, and that she would not be supporting his renomination to another term as Fed chair. Of course, the dragon was citing Powell's sort of general policy leanings, but I think it's also fair for us in crypto to speculate that maybe Dragon just doesn't like Chair Powell talking about those Federal Reserve cryptos. So of course, if the dragon has her way, Powell would never get a chance to even participate in any of this CBDC business. As you can see from the look on his face here, Powell was pretty much like, WTF, dragon. Check this out. This is kind of an action-packed day. The Wall Street Journal on its main channel released a video called How Cardano's ADA, an alternative to Bitcoin, cracked the crypto market. And it's not actually, from the title, you would think that this was actually kind of a sophisticated breakdown of the unique market dynamics that led to Cardano catapulting itself into the third place spot. That is not the way most of the video reads. It is in fact a super basic explainer video where they go into a little bit of detail about the difference between things like proof of stake and proof of work. But I was just stoked to see that the Wall Street Journal main channel is talking about Cardano. Based on the view count in this video and the fact that it's unlisted, I know a lot of you have not seen this particular video. This is Charles's speech before the Government Blockchain Association. He flew right after the Cardano Summit. Charles flew to DC to do this. So he ended up giving kind of a sprawling 30-minute talk. And then I think it was like an hour and 40 minutes of Q&A. And there were actually some pretty well-informed people in the audience. There were some very not well-informed people, but also some people who asked some pretty good questions out of the audience. And most of it, if you're familiar with Charles's AMAs, most of what he said would be very familiar to you. There were a couple of interesting things. In this particular spot in either the Q&A or his speech, he had occasion to mention the crypto gaming and the fact that he was building a game called Crypto Bisons. He also talked about tokenizing bison on his ranch, which is a very different thing than the Crypto Bisons game in my mind. If what he was talking about is actually like having fractionalized tokens that represent ownership interests in bison on his ranch, I'm very interested, because I would love to own one of those bison. But we'll see if that's actually what he's talking about. I hope so. I hope that's exactly what it was. That happens at 9:22 9 hours and 22 minutes into this video. This is a pretty long video covering the entire conference, not just his speech. I believe that's at 9 hours and 22 minutes. He was also asked a question, I thought kind of an interesting question. The question was, should big crypto entities back the little projects who might get in trouble with the SEC? So in essence, if a small project is built on your blockchain, should a big entity like Cardano come to the rescue if the SEC tries to go after one of the little projects? And Charles's response was not quite what a lot of people might have expected. He said, "Hey, look," and it was a long answer, and I'm going to paraphrase it and oversimplify it. But he said, "Hey, look, one problem is that in order to decide which of these little projects the big projects are going to back, you would need for those little projects to display so much transparency, because you'd want to make sure they're not actually bad guys who should be the subjects of enforcement actions from the SEC. The amount of transparency you would need them to display would be basically tantamount to actual compliance. So that's the first practical problem." But he also said the problem with regulation of crypto is too nuanced for all the big projects to just band together and try to protect all the little guys. He said, we're actually going to lose. We're actually going to lose some things. We're going to win on some things, and we're actually going to lose on some things. And there will be bad laws. And he cited a very specific bad law that was passed in the early days of the internet, which we obviously overcame. But he's basically signaling like, look, there's going to be bad regulation that's really going to stymie growth in the crypto industry. I'm heavily paraphrasing here and putting words in his mouth. But to me, he's signaling we're going to have some bad regulations and we're just going to have to weather it. That's the way it's going to be. We're going to have to weather it, because what's needed is not like slight modification of the SEC and the CFTC and other agencies' regulations. They need a whole new regulatory framework and outlook to even begin to deal with crypto, because it's equally disruptive as the internet itself. There was no way for the currently existing sort of telecommunications laws to deal with the internet when the internet at the advent of the internet. We needed brand new laws that were made from scratch to deal with the internet stuff, and likewise with crypto. That's heavy paraphrasing, putting a lot of words in his mouth, but that's what I took away from that. And of course, Charles is a huge libertarian, so I'm sure his actual position would be something more like, let's not even have an SEC or a CFTC, and let's go with a states' rights approach, where the states would get to regulate those things individually, or something like that. I'm sure he would favor much less regulation than just let's create a brand new regulatory framework at the federal level. Finally, Shahaf Bar-Geffen had a short interview on the Crypto Banner channel. A few of you had told me about this little interview segment, and I thought it was worth it. Go take a look. One of the funnier things that's come up over and over again in the last few days since the summit is how you pronounce the name of the algorithmic stablecoin that Coty is going to issue, and it's spelled Djed. And I've seen multiple people even give me very different accounts of how Shahaf Bar-Geffen, the head of Coty, pronounced it in this interview. But the interviewer asked him straight up, how do you pronounce this name? And to my ears, it sounds like he says Djed. But I had people tell me it was, or what I understood from what certain people were telling me, was a pronunciation closer to Djed. But to my ears, it sounds like he just says Djed. We had a little bit of a discussion during the live stream about whether or not anybody actually knows how the names of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs were actually pronounced. I know linguists will make arguments that they can reconstruct pronunciation based on analysis of, Coptic language and things like that. I'm suspicious whether we actually know what any Egyptian word sounded like, but it sounds to me like Shahaf Bar-Geffen is saying Djed. So I think I'm going to go with Djed. If somebody has a good argument why it should be something else, let me know, but I'm going to go with Djed for now. More importantly, he seemed to indicate that Djed would be pegged to USD. In the past, we've heard a lot of different discussions about Djed possibly being pegged to a basket of different currencies, with people throwing around candidates like pound sterling, euro, yen, USD, possibly Swiss franc, things like that being included in a basket. But he didn't mention a basket of currencies in this interview. He mentioned USD. So it sounds like maybe initially it would just be pegged to USD. Of course, I think we all know at this point that Djed could be pegged to anything, maybe even things that aren't currencies, which is super interesting. He also said Coty's job as issuer of Djed will be to deploy the smart contract and do basically everything around Djed. Initially, I don't think from the surprise one last thing announcement of the summit, we didn't know exactly what Coty would be doing. We knew it was going to be the issuer and executing on the Djed plan, but they're going to not only deploy the smart contract, but also do everything with Djed, including deal with exchanges who want to start including Djed, things like that. So they're really going to be doing everything. And it definitely appeared from this interview that the crypto banter guy and Shahaf Bar-Geffen definitely seem to know each other and be on pretty good terms. Like it seems like they're buddies. And the crypto banter guy kind of let on that he knew there was more to come out of the Cardano and Coty partnership. And he tried to kind of goad Shahaf Bar-Geffen into revealing something. And of course, Shahaf Bar-Geffen, being a good dude, he kind of refused to reveal what more was to come out of the sort of Cardano Coty partnership wheelhouse. But it sounds like there's something pretty significant, something pretty big that we still haven't heard about. So I think there's some more news. There's some more news to come on the Cardano and Coty front. I can't wait to hear what that is. I'm excited. I think we're on really good footing post Cardano Summit, post Alonzo, now in the sort of Gogan era of Cardano. I'm excited, and I will talk to you tomorrow.